Japanese yokai have fascinated humanity for centuries, and they have recently made their way into anime and manga. This list explores some of the scariest and most entertaining. Yokai have a long and storied history in Japan. These ghosts or supernatural creatures were often used to explain fearsome natural phenomena during the Meiji period and were held in high regard. However, during the Edo period, they started to take on a more entertaining role in culture due to the efforts of the philosopher Inoue Enryo, 1858 to 1919, and the advent of science in bigger cities. City folks were also becoming more disconnected from nature in contrast to their rural counterparts. Today they still hold a prominent place in Japanese art and culture, and can be seen in popular anime and manga such as Demon Slayer and Yokai Watch. Yuki-onna, ever seen a beautiful woman with snow-white skin and long black hair wandering through the frigid winter? It may have been a Yuki-onna, snow woman. When she walks along a snow-covered terrain, you won't find any footprints behind her. The majority of Yuki-onna stories originate from Japan's snowy, northern prefectures like Aomori and Akita in the Tohoku region. In some versions, she is a snow vampire who sucks the souls out of her victims. In other versions, she uses her supernatural beauty to lure weak-willed men into the cold, then leaves them to freeze to death. Savage, some say the Yuki-onna was a beautiful woman who was murdered in the snow and now does the same to others as an act of revenge. Chochin Obake, this lantern ghost isn't malicious like other yokai, he's just a naughty little trickster who enjoys giving humans a scare. The Chochin Obake, paper lantern ghost, will flick its large tongue out, roll its eyes and laugh loudly to frighten passers-by. It's actually kind of cute. The Chochin Obake does not appear in any of Japan's mythical stories or legends, and only appears in ukiyo-e and kabuki plays. So there is no origin for this particular yokai. One theory is that he was invented simply to scare children. However, tsukumogami, tool spirit, do appear in Japanese mythology. Tsukumogami are tools or objects which become yokai after 100 years, thus, a regular lantern may turn into Chochin Obake after 100 years of use. This comes from the ancient Shinto religious belief that all objects, even inanimate ones, have a soul. Maybe don't visit any temples, izakaya or other places likely to have lanterns if you don't want to run into one. Then again, they might make for a good drinking buddy. Joragumo, translated to English, Joragumo means woman spider. However, the kanji can also mean entangling bride or horse spider. They are cunning and appear as seductive young women. They feed on young men who fall for their tricks, trapping them in their webs and devouring them slowly. The Joragumo legend is based on the real golden orb weaver spider, which is found all around Japan. When the spider reaches 400 years old, she will transform into a Joragumo and start preying on humans. There are several stories based on the Joragumo. In Tono Igusa, Night Watchman's storybook, a young warrior encounters a beautiful woman. Realizing she is a yokai, he strikes her with his sword, and she flees to the attic. There, they find a dead spider about 30 centimeters long and surrounded by decaying bodies. In Aizu, Joran Falls is home to a Joragumo. The legend says a woodcutter encountered the spider when she tried to drag him behind the waterfall. He escaped, warning the village to stay away, but an outsider met the Joragumo. Surprisingly, she let him live as long as he never spoke of it. Unfortunately, the man was the opposite of coy. The story diverges from there, but most versions end with him entangled in spider web and wishing he had kept his mouth shut. Worse, Joragumo isn't the only killer spider in Japan. Tsuchigumo, dirt/earth spider, are huge wandering spiders with human-like faces that hide in corners and dark spaces. They were likely influenced by the real-life Chinese bird spider and bandits and soldiers that hid in the shadows and preferred to ambush people. Gashadakuro, the poor, unfortunate bones of those who've perished on the battlefield turn into Gashadakuro, starving skeleton. These yokai form in places where masses of normal skeletons lie, such as in villages after famine or disease has wiped out the population. Because they died without a proper burial or funeral rites, the souls and bones come together and create one giant skeleton, 15 times the size of an average person. The skeleton specters feed on lone travelers, biting their heads off, feasting on their bones and drinking their blood, Dracula style. It is like some sort of boss from Castlevania. You may have seen this yokai in the famous ukiyo-e Takayasha the Witch and the Skeleton Spectre by the famed Kuniyashi. Yamaba, are you planning on hiking in the mountains this fall? You may want to rethink that, as that's where you'll find the Yamaba, mountain witch. These decrepit hags, depicted as old women with messy hair and filthy kimonos, are known to offer shelter to weary travelers only to kill them once they fall asleep. The Yamaba were once regular women but fled to the forest after being accused of crimes. Another theory is they were victims of ubasut, literally abandoning an old woman. During hard times such as famine, a family would lead their elderly into the forest to die. Here, they would grow angry and resentful, becoming cannibalistic and practicing black magic. However, in some stories, they are benevolent. For example, a Yamaba might give a kind stranger treasure or good fortune. In Aichi, Yamaba are seen as protective gods. Kukusei-kana, this is a more contemporary addition to the list, first appearing in the 16th and 17th centuries, and having a resurgence in popularity in the 1970s. This yokai is a malevolent spirit who takes the form of a beautiful woman wearing a mask and carrying scissors. If you happen to encounter her in a dark alleyway, she will ask you whether she is beautiful, and if you reply with a no, she will stab you. If you reply yes, she will pull down her mask to reveal that her mouth has been slit open from ear to ear. She will repeat her question, and if you reply no, she will stab you, but if you reply yes, she will slit your mouth with the scissors so that you can be beautiful like her. Unfortunately, there is no escaping this yokai, and an encounter with her will lead to either death or disfigurement. She was disfigured during her human life when her husband, a samurai, found out about her adultery and punished her accordingly by slitting her mouth. However, in some stories, they are benevolent. For example, a Yamaba might give a kind stranger treasure or good fortune. In Aichi, Yamaba are seen as protective gods. Kappa, this small human-like creature has a shell like a turtle, green scaly skin, and a plate on its head that must be filled with water at all times to stay alive. They live in Japan's rivers, lakes and other waterways. In Shintoism, Kappa, river child, are respected as gods of water, and statues of them can sometimes be seen at shrines around Japan. Kappa quirks include having an affinity for cucumbers, hence the kappamaki, and never breaking a promise. In the urban legend version, a more menacing Kappa loves to pull lost children and animals into the water to drown and eat. They still like to eat cucumbers but also raw human intestines. Akamanto, another contemporary yokai, the story goes that this ghost will appear in front of you if you decide to use the last stall in an elementary school restroom. The ghost will hold up 2 rolls of toilet paper, one red and one blue, and ask you to pick a color. If you choose red, the ghost will stab you to death, covering you in so much blood that it looks like a red cloak. If you choose blue, they will strangle you, or all the blood will be sucked from your body. Another lose-lose situation. In some versions, it is actually a serial killer waiting in the next stall, or a kainade. The kainade is a yokai who lives in toilets and reaches up to stroke people's rear ends. In this version, the color that the student chooses determines the color of the arm that reaches up. Futakuchiana, two-mouthed woman, is a type of yokai or Japanese monster. She is characterized by her two mouths, a normal one located on her face and a second one on the back of the head beneath the hair. There, the woman's skull splits apart, forming lips, teeth and a tongue, creating an entirely functional second mouth. In Japanese mythology and folklore, Futakuchiana belongs to the same class of stories as Rokurokubi, Kukisekana and Yamayuba, women afflicted with a curse or supernatural disease that transforms them into yokai. The supernatural nature of the women in these stories is usually concealed until the last minute, when the true self is revealed. Jubako, at first glance, these seem like ordinary trees. However, as one gets closer, heaps of human bones become visible at the base of the tree. By then it is too late to backtrack, and the tree will lift you up into its bough, sucking out all your blood with tube-like twigs. Insects and birds will consume the rest of the corpse until only the dry bones fall to the earth below. Jubako were ordinary trees once, but if a massacre or battle happened nearby, all the blood soaking the earth would be absorbed by the trees, which transforms them into yokai. Oberian, this is an imp-like creature who jumps onto the backs of unsuspecting travelers, piggyback style. The name comes from this action, as one would ask for a piggyback ride by saying the phrase Oberian, which is part of a local dialect in Niigata Prefecture. Some versions of the myth state that this yokai will get heavier with every step the traveler takes until the weight crushes them. Another version says that if the traveler is able to bear the weight, the Oberian will turn into a sack of gold as a reward. Nurabotoke, this yokai is named after its appearance as a Buddha-like imp, with a round belly, a tail, and eyes hanging out of its sockets. It also has ink-black oily skin and leaves a pungent smell wherever it goes. They usually appear at family shrines, called butsudens, which have been left open overnight, allowing them to crawl through from another world. In Japanese homes, butsudan are closed each night to prevent such creatures from entering. They may also appear in homes that are run down, or if shrines are not properly cared for. They do not do much except flap their tail and terrorize the unfortunate family whose butsudan they crawled out of. Some legends state that they may even give false prophecies or try to trick humans. They can be kept at bay by sprinkling salt on the floor, and they will return to the butsudan at sunrise. Ninjyo, unlike beautiful mermaids from the Western traditions, these yokai are more fish than human and are often described as hideous, deformed creatures. They range in appearance, from grotesque fish-like faces to human torsos with sharp claws and a tail. Some are depicted as a human head on a fish body. They have been documented in some of the earliest Japanese texts such as the Nihon Shoki, which dates back to 619 CE. They are not particularly harmful to humans, but if caught or wounded they will curse their assailant, some going so far as to curse whole families or villages, which will then be swallowed up by a tsunami or destroyed by an earthquake. Some fishermen set out to catch them despite the danger, as it is said that eating a ninjyo's flesh will grant eternal youth. Some mummies held at temples claim to be ninjyo, but more often than not they are man-made, using fish parts. These are known as Fiji mermaids in the West. Kitsune, in Japanese folklore, kitsune are foxes that possess paranormal abilities that increase as they get older and wiser. According to folklore, the kitsune foxes, or perhaps the fox spirits, can bewitch people, just like the tanuki. They have the ability to shape-shift into human or other forms, and to trick or fool human beings. While some folktales speak of kitsune employing this ability to trick others, as foxes in folklore often do, Other stories portray them as faithful guardians, friends, and lovers. Foxes and humans lived close together in ancient Japan. This companionship gave rise to legends about the creatures. Kitsune have become closely associated with Inari, a Shinto kami or spirit, and serve as its messengers. This role has reinforced the fox's supernatural significance. The more tails a kitsune has, they may have as many as 9, the older, wiser, and more powerful it is. Because of their potential power and influence, some people make sacrifices to them as to a deity.